Hey everybody, how we doing today? So in today's video, we are going to be working on the Suzuki 2.5 horsepower outboard motor, and specifically the throttle cable, problems, and solutions. So let's get started. The different problems that you can have, the reason why I'm replacing mine is that I overheated the motor, and I'm pretty sure what happened is that the cable that runs underneath the motor overheated as well, and then now it's pinching off the accelerator cable, so my throttle is basically locked up or very difficult to use. This would be the same instance if you accidentally break the cable for whatever reason, it wears out, the end breaks so you don't have it long enough, and you just basically need to replace the cable. Second problem occurs when this throttle handle starts getting real gritty to the point it gets locked up. The reason for that is this handle is metal, runs all the way up to here, and then it converts to a round tube to the end, all in metal. Then this rubber throttle handle is underneath it is a plastic tube, and that slips over the metal tube. And it just has enough plastic versus metal that it can slide fairly easily. The problem that occurs is when you get salt water or water underneath there, it starts corroding that metal, and that metal starts expanding and it starts grinding on it, and to the point where it'll even stop, or for some people, if you don't use your motor for a long time, that corrosion builds up and it's just locked up right when you get it. Also, just dirt and grime gets in there and it makes it rough, and you just want to clean it out. So basically this needs to be cleaned and lubricated, or sometimes it needs to be sanded down to get rid of that corrosion and rust, and then lubed and then put back together again, and it'll be nice and smooth. The third problem will be is this, basically the stopper, and this is kind of like your cruise control. It just has a pin that as you tighten this screw down, it butts up against the plastic knob, so it'll allow you to turn the handle and let it go, just like cruise control. Whereas if you keep it really loose, now it's just flexible. If you let go, it goes back to zero. So it's just a cruise control. That's plastic, it breaks, and then I have a resolution to fix that as well. So generally what we're gonna do is that we're going to take the handle off the motor, replace the cable, and I'm gonna show you how to do that, as well as have you take a look at how easy it is to clean this handle off and to replace this if necessary. Unfortunately, because of the way the cable is routed underneath the motor, and there are two clips that hold the cable to the bottom part of the plastic, we have to remove the power head from the plastic case to get at it. So I'll be going through that with you as well. Here underneath the back underside of the case, you can see the two clips that hold the cable, and their job is to prevent that cable from moving around and possibly butting up against the hot motor and melting and causing it to bind up. You can remove the cable without disassembling or pulling the power head off by just popping these two clips in and then sliding the cable out from underneath the motor. The issue becomes when you try to reinstall it, you can install the cable, but you can't put these clips in, which prevents that overcooking problem. So that's why we have to remove the power head from this plastic. All right, let's get started. This is going to require us to remove the power head from the main body there. Not very difficult if you just take it step by step. A good recommendation is take video or photos as you disassemble, which will allow you to reassemble a lot easier, especially if this is your first time. So we're going to remove the cover. Okay, and that'll give us access to the motor. We're going to be removing the handle here. It's got two inserts that go into the case. One is your wiring for your turn off, turn on. There is a ground underneath here, and then just a push on clip. The second cable is your actual throttle cable, and it runs underneath the motor and comes back out over here and accesses to the carburetor here. So what we're going to be doing is taking off a few pieces first, and then removing this whole case, and then separating the power head from the case, and then that'll give us access to run the throttle cable the correct way. One addendum is that I am doing this on a older style motor. Newer motors has the emission control carburetor systems with the fuel pump. So you have a couple of extra hoses that you have to deal with. Really the only one that is a factor is this one that goes from the fuel pump underneath the front of the motor, almost in parallel with our throttle cable, under the front of the motor, and comes out back underneath and to the carburetor. So just want to make sure that you keep an eye on how that's routed when you take it off. Well, you don't have to take that off, but when you remove the power head and put it back, to make sure it's routed in conjunction with the throttle cable. The other hose goes from the fuel pump down underneath to the actual fuel tank here, but that's where we're going to remove to take the fuel tank off anyway, so that's actually the same. But that's really the only difference between old and new. The first step is we're going to remove the pull starter and the fuel tank. So that is held on by 3 bolts, one here, and one there. It goes through the starter and the fuel tank. Once you got those bolts out, this will separate, taking the cover with it. You'll separate the fuel outlet. It's just got a little spring clip on it, and you can just pull the hose off. That's down here. From there, you can wiggle out the fuel tank. It's a tight squeeze, but you could maneuver it around to pull it out. There's 2 plastic studs on the back that have a rubber grommet, so you want to make sure you don't lose those. And then the fuel on-off valve has a slot where it can only be in an off position and pulled straight out. But once you wiggle that, those 2 will be out, and they'll give us plenty of room. Corrosion. Let go. All right, that is our starter off. That was just to take the fuel line off the gas tank. This kind of, I don't need to take it off right now because the whole power head's coming off, but if you finagle it, you can get it out. Just like that. Bam. With the starter and the fuel tank removed, we could start unbolting the attachment locations. One, we've got the electrical wire here that has 2 wires. Once this is off, you're going to see that there's a bolt that holds on to the ground. So you just remove that bolt, take off that ground, and you could put the bolt back in lightly just to keep it in place. And then the second wire is just a plug, so you just need to unplug it. That's the wiring is complete, put it out of the way. Then we can move over to the actual throttle cable. First location point is this screw here. You just loosen it, you don't have to remove it, and that cable will slide out of this recess here, and that is free. The next spot is this choke rod here, and you just basically have this plastic clip holding it, push on the clip and until it snaps off, and then you could lift off the choke cable or rod. The rod is actually going to stay with the housing, so when you're removing the power head, you just want to make sure this is free and doesn't get caught up and damaged. Next, we're going to remove the actual cable housing here, and it's attached to this bracket. There's 2 nuts on either side of it that clamp it together. You're going to take the nut from the front side facing the front, undo that one all the way, and once you remove that, this cable will just pull right off. There is this little PVC breather as well. You can just use your finger or a screwdriver and just push that off. Outside of that, we are good to go. This will be the ignition. That's the ground. Alright, so that handle is totally free. Now I got these cables and the cut off undone, so I can take this handle off. Keep all the washers together. There we go. And that's what we're going to be replacing. Now we're ready to separate the power head from the mid unit. The way we're going to do that is underneath, we're going to detach it by removing these bolts. There are actually 8 different bolts running around the perimeter. 4 of them are touching metal to the housing here, and 4 of them touch plastic. So to separate the whole entire unit, plastic and the power head, we're going to only want to remove the 4 bolts that touch metal. So just go around, look for the one touching metal, remove those, and then this power head is ready to be popped off. You just give it a good hit, and then you can start wiggling it, and it should separate from this mid unit, just leaving the little mid shaft sticking out. All right, I got those 4 bolts out, so now I should, in theory, be able to just smack it and separate the top power head from the mid case. Let's see how this goes. Come on, baby. Perfect. That is perfect. Then when we're ready to separate the power head from this case on our workbench, we're going to turn it over, and then we're going to remove the 4 bolts touching plastic. And that's going to allow us to separate the power head from this lower plastic cover. Yeah, these 4 touch plastic, these 4 touch the metal. Okay, and then now I can lift this power head off of here. I don't want to damage the arm. Bam. Now we have that off. Once we have the power head removed from the plastic case, then you'll have access to see where the throttle cable is routed through along the bottom of the case and then out towards the other side and loops back around. That will also give us access to the 2 clips that prevent that cable from moving in closer to the motor and getting cooked. And these are the little clips that poke into there, and that holds that throttle cable. That's the only reason why I'm taking this off, so I could run those cables through those locks. Okay, so here is our throttle handle assembly. The basic components are, you have the twist handle here that controls your acceleration, the throttle cable to your carburetor. This is what I call the cruise control, but it basically does is that you can tighten it down. It puts tension on this knob, so you could put it in any position and basically it'll stay there. Or you can loosen it up and then it'll automatically spring back to the closed position. So if you're going a long distance and you don't want to have your hand on there the whole time, you can just put it into the position you want it, tighten that screw down, and then it'll hold it there. My handle actually broke off, the little knob broke, so I was able to replace that, but I'll show you what that looks like. From there, we've got the actual cable assembly that works into this section here, runs through and here to our cable. You can see the damaged area here where this cable got to a point where it was touching or very close to the motor. I overheated my motor, so it got really hot, and it ended up melting this protective rubber plastic sleeve, and then I think it did the same to the internal components of this metal shield. But anyways, there's a wire that runs all the way through the cable to this assembly here, and that's how you twist the handle, and then that pulls on your carburetor lever there. Also what you have is your kill switch, basically, your off switch. The way that works is in a resting position, it's actually separating the negative polarity so the motor can't start. There's no ground to it. But when you put this clip in there and you snap it in there, it wedges the button out, and that actually creates the connection to your ground and allows you to get spark and to start your motor. So basically the way it works, you put this clip in, and then if you want to, you could physically press on the button and it shuts your motor off. That's how you turn the motor off when you want it to kill it. Also, when you have these little carabiners on there, what this is for is you attach this to your body or you hold on to it as you're driving around, you fall out of the boat, this comes off, it detaches that clip, the button shuts, and then that kills your motor and your boat doesn't drift away from you, and then you're safe there. So that's kind of that component there. There's basically two wires there, the ground, and then this goes to the power box, the ignition box on your motor there. So those are basically the components there. The areas that we're going to work on is to disassemble the handle in case you have that gritty handle where it is either just real rough and gritty, or it could be to the point where if you were not using the motor for a long time, this handle is frozen and you can't even turn it. You might think it's the cable is bad, but it's actually the rod underneath here has corroded or rusted, swelled up, and then the plastic underneath this handle is compressed and it won't turn anymore. So that's one. Two is if you break off this little lever here that adjusts the tensioner for your cruise control, how to replace that with a screw. And then three is to actually change out your cable should you have the problem like I did. So let's get to it. In order to take off the handle as well as to take off your cable, you need to take off these two screws here. You can see it from this side, it's just got the dead butt side there. So we're going to take off those two screws. Alright, so once you've taken those two screws out, you're ready to separate this clamshell. Pay attention to the direction that it sits at. So this is sitting upside down. The two screws would be facing up basically. This curved comb piece is facing away from me. And then you can lift it up and take a look at it. So you can see the cable runs from this and comes out through the bottom there and comes out on this side. You can probably see it better there. So it runs along here and goes through there and underneath. Then we're going to separate, pull the bottom part off. That comes completely off. So we're going to keep that in the same direction so we know how it sits. And then now you can kind of see how the cable runs over the top, goes through the slot here, and then you can kind of see there's a barrel on the end of the cable, and that's how it locks it in. And then there's two slots right through here. That's how you can get that barrel out. Find that slot for the cable, and then you could work the little barrel end out. So to put it back in, you just find the slot, or find the barrel hole first, and then the slot for the cable. Oops. There it goes. Get the fit in there, and then bring it back around. So that's how it fits in there, just using that little slot. Once you have that, then the handle should slide off, but if yours is rusty, just shoot a lot of oil penetrating lube in there to get it separated. But that removes our handle there. So you can kind of see it's just a hard plastic underneath the rubber handle there, and it basically just pivots on this metal arm here, which has been rounded up, so it's kind of a rounded form here. It's got this little slot as well. But you can see how dirty it is already, and I've actually cleaned this one not too long ago because I've changed this out. But you can see how gunky this gets. I put grease on mine so at least it's not rusting and then corroding, but that's the cause of that problem for a rough throttle handle there. Alright, I'm going to give this shaft a good cleaning there. You could also hit it with some sandpaper, make it really smooth, put some paint on it, or just grease it. But you definitely want to put some sort of a rust preventer on there, just to keep it clean, because the only thing that allows that handle to turn is just it's a plastic tube that slips over. So for mine, I'm just going to load it up with some grease, and then that's going to be done. Now moving on to the cable, that basically just routes through here, goes behind the plug there, and then through this opening you can see there, right through there. So you can just basically slide it out. Okay, get that pulled out of there. Come on, baby. You can make it. You can do it. I might have to take that ignition out, because I could force this out, but I don't know if I could force it back in easily. There it goes. And that is our cable removed. Alright, so online I checked it. This cable is basically $80 plus $10 shipping, so it's roughly around $90 to replace this cable. It basically goes all the way around the chrome piece, and then this little bracket that holds the unit onto this plastic piece. This is separate, but you'll get here, and then the internal cable with the barrel nut there. So that's $90. Crazy. I've already got a spare one I bought used with a complete handle assembly, so this is just I'm going to use for an example. This actually is supposed to be a screw that is just rusted off head, so I would use a die grinder, cut a notch, and try to use a screwdriver to break it loose, or I would just grind it off so I could take it apart and then grind and re-tap out the screw there, because all it is just a screw that holds this bracket on, which holds this chrome piece on, which holds the cable on. So that's all that is. And yeah, you're ready to assemble if that's all you're doing is replacing this cable. Next up, we're gonna replace the cruise control knob here. Basically all it is a friction device. It's got this lever handle here, and then it's got a plastic threaded stud that goes in, and then when you tighten it down, that stud hits against the plastic that rotates on the inside there, that's attached to your handle here. So when it's got tension on it, it'll go and it'll stop wherever you leave it, or if you don't want that, you can loosen it and then it'll automatically go to the 0 point whenever. So it just depends. Like I said, it's cruise control. Problem that happens is because you have this big lever here and it's just a thin plastic rod that goes in, you hit that and this head will just snap right off, or it'll just get brittle after a while, and as you're tensioning it down, it'll just break right off. So let me show you a cheap replacement for that. Alright, so to repair our cruise control, if you happen to break off that little lever there, plastic leather, you'll end up having the stud kind of, depending on where it broke off at. If you can get some vice grips on it, then you could unscrew the little plastic stud, which is easy. Otherwise, you might have to drill it and tap it and back it out. It's not frozen in there, it's plastic, so it comes out fairly easily. The replacement levered plastic nut is $8 plus shipping. Or you could do what I did, is I matched the thread on this mount and just went and got a stainless steel screw. All it does is that threads through those, and then it comes out the bottom, and as you tighten this up, it goes farther in, and then it butts up against that wheel and puts pressure on it, and that locks it up so it can't move, and that's basically your cruise control. Quick and easy fix. I think I paid $1. And finally, if you need to replace the ignition switch, your safety off button here, all it is this is a plastic nut, and you just unscrew that, and then the unit will actually fit through the nut and out. And that's basically it. It's just 2 wires, so nothing real complicated, but should you ever have to replace it, that's how you do it. 1 nut. Alright, to make the cable routing easier, I am going to go and take this ignition cutoff off. You just basically unscrew the nut, pulls over, and that comes out, and that'll allow us to run our cable a lot easier. Goes under here. up and out. Okay. Then we could put our ignition switch back in. Okay, then we can slide our handle on, and let's put the final assembly. Okay, let's go ahead and put this back together again. So first off, we're going to want to put this barrel nut stopper, cable stopper, in the hole there. Goes around. There. That holds it. Then, oops. Right there. Then we've got the cover, and you can see there's a little knobby that sticks out there, just a little round knobby. And it'll fit in that little round knobby there. So that cover goes there. If you find the hole, it'll sit flush, and then allow these two to butt up against each other. Bam, bam, nice and flush. Got our throttle working freely, and then we could put our bolts in, or 2 screws. Okay, and there we go. So this sits onto the flush against the motor. I know this points 90 degrees straight out. This kind of angles down. Our stop switch is there. We go there, and then bam, that's our throttle there. So that is it. We basically fixed the grittiness on the handle here. We replaced our broken cruise control there. We replaced our cable there. We replace our ignition kill there. What else can you do? Buy them. Ready to be reassembled. This is actually the spare one I bought. So I am going to try to see if I could fix this cable or come up with a different option, do a custom one, because I don't want to spend $90 on it. And my motor's already running. But there you go. Now assembly is basically just do the steps in reverse, so very easy. There's actually only one gasket that you might have to replace, and that is the gasket that goes between the power head and this mid shaft here. If you're careful and don't damage it, you're fine. If you don't have access to that gasket, you could just put a thin layer of gasket glue and that will seal as well. I've done that before. Or you can just use the old gasket to cut out another gasket from some gasket material and you're set there. Otherwise it's like $8. The main important thing though is before you start the assembly, you're going to see that shaft sticking out from here and it's going to have the splines on it. That's a major problem with these motors, is that salt water gets in there and it corrosion welds that shaft to the little coupler that couples between that and the crankshaft. And if that corrosion welds, that means you can't separate the head like this. It means that you can't get access to the lower end to do water pump impellers, to do the gears or any type of work in the lower end. Same thing is you're not going to be able to separate the power head to remove it to do any work either, because the crankshaft is corrosion welded all the way straight down. So just get some anti-seize or something to put on those splines before you do the assembly. But otherwise, just follow the same steps in reverse and you're good to go. All right, now I just need to transfer the washers and bolts and stuff to the new throttle handle here. So we've got a washer, a bolt, this plastic cover, which will just go there. This washer will go on there. There's one piece here. Yeah, this little spacer there. Drops in. That. Oops, what happened? that, like that. And that's ready to be bolted on. All right, we can run our cable and our wiring through there. Get that set up. And this will be going through here, that, with our bolt and our washer. But for now, I want to run this new throttle cable, snap that in, run it through our zip tie mount we just made. There we go. So it has a little bit of room. Okay. And that goes like that, wraps around. Like this. All right, let's see if we can install the power head. We just got to watch out for that choke bar. Oh, where does this go? Here. This has to go through there. Like that. Line up these. And there we go. Now I'm going to put 4 bolts through the bottom and then start reassembly. Alright, I'm just getting these in hand tight. Alright, let's take a look, make sure everything's squared away. That's good. Got our cable access, throttle cables here. Choke cables there. Alright, looks good. Alright, let's mount the handle here. Find the hole. There we go. Make sure our cap's on. Washer. Bolt it in there. That basically threads into the block. Okay. Let's get it snug for now. Plenty of room. Move this down in here. Make sure the cable's out, so that goes to our ground. Looking good. And we could just test it, make sure it turns easy. Perfect. No binding. All right, let's get the gas tank on, connect everything, and put this back. All right, finished bolting up the accessories, our new handle, ran our cable along the bottom, attached it to the block here, just 2 nuts that sandwich it, run the cable through our throttle linkage there. 1 wire goes to the ground, just bolts into there, and then 1 just plugs in. And now all plugged in the fuel line, and now we just have to put our starter, pull starter on, and that'll lock up the starter through the gas tank to our mounts. And then this will be done. Then we can go underneath, tighten the 4, and drop it back onto our base there. All right, drop that on. Got the bolts started. Alright, I think we are good to go. Yep. Okay, I'm gonna flip it over and then tighten up those 4 bottom bolts. All right, we could trim our little cable bracket. There we go. And tighten these 4. Okay, back over, turn off our gas vent. All right, we're ready to mount this back on. But first, I gotta do some gasket removal here on the head there, on the block. And then it ended up tearing right here, so I'm gonna put a new gasket, or actually a new used gasket, because I recycle these. I take these off so often it gets expensive, so I try to reuse them when I can. So I've got this one. It just had a little tear right there, so I'm gonna put some gasket glue, and I'll put a thin layer of gasket glue around this and on here, and then we'll mount it up. All right, now by far the most important part is that we want to put some anti-seize on this collar here, or to make sure that this doesn't get stuck, and corrosion weld to the little coupler that attaches this to the crank on the power head. Okay, just a little bit will do you. And that'll allow us to pop that head off anytime we want to. If you don't do that, that locks up. Whole big problem. I've got other videos about that, but there we go. So we're gonna drop the head on. Usually what I do is just make sure this is straight front and back. And then when I drop the power head, I make that straight front and back. Just make sure I have the angles in the same directions, not 180 off. And then insert in the hole and then drop it down. All right, let's do this. And there we go. Perfect. All right, we've got the 4 bolts that go through the middle part of it, and then we are done. Cable swapped. All right, we are done. Throttle cable's on there. Bam. Nice and smooth. Sweet sauce. So that's it. We are done. Hot, sweaty, but project done. Oh, broken. Gotta buy that. Dang it. All right, let's check it out.